As I sat in class on a Tuesday morning, I heard a classmate, Jake, say, I need to return to school on Wednesday. This got me thinking about how to remember new words better. I had recently started reading more books, and while I noticed improvements in my writing, I still had trouble remembering words. I kept a small notebook where I wrote down new words while reading. But even after 10 minutes, when I saw the same word again, it just slipped my mind, and I had to look it up once more. Can you help me with better ways to remember words? I asked my teacher, Mrs. Miller. She smiled and said, That's an interesting question. It's very normal not to remember a new word right away. Sometimes you might need to check the meaning 10 or even 15 times before it sticks, especially for verbs. Mrs. Miller explained that learning new words happens in stages. She said there are 5 phases. Let's break them down, she continued. The first phase is when you see a new word for the first time and you don't know what it means. You look it up in the dictionary. The second phase is when you recognize a word you've seen before but still can't recall its meaning. You check the dictionary again. In the third phase, you start to have an idea of what the word might mean, but you are still not sure. Maybe you can tell if it's an object, an animal, or a verb. The fourth phase is when you understand what the word means when you see it, but you can't say it when you want to. This is where the word lives in your passive vocabulary. Finally, the fifth phase is when you can use the word in conversation. Do you see now why it's tough to remember a new word when you first encounter it? You have to go through all these phases, and sometimes you'll need to see or hear a word many times before it sticks. I was surprised to learn about these phases. It made sense. I remembered times I looked up a word only to forget it a few minutes later. It didn't feel great to forget, but now I realized it was normal. I needed to see a word multiple times before it felt familiar. After school, I headed to my soccer practice. Our coach, Mr. Adams, told us we had a match against another school on Saturday. He asked me to play for the school team, and I was thrilled. I couldn't wait for Saturday's game. To really remember a new word, Mrs. Miller said you should see or hear it about 10 times. The next day, back in school, another student raised his hand and asked how to get better at listening. He wanted to know what the best ways to practice were. Mrs. Miller replied, Thank you for your question. Good listening skills are vital for communication. If you can't understand what others are saying, it's hard to talk to them. She pointed out that there are many resources online for English learners. However, finding the right listening materials can be a challenge. Let's explore what you should listen to. There are 2 main types of materials: audio recordings and films. Each has different rules. When listening to audio, you should understand at least 95% of the words. If there are many new words, read the text first to ensure you know them all. When practicing listening, focus on gathering information from spoken language rather than trying to memorize new words. It's not about learning new vocabulary, it's about understanding the message. Mrs. Miller recommended using simplified English books that come with audio recordings. These are great because you can choose a book that matches your level. Read the book first, then listen to the recording at home or while traveling. You can find some wonderful books at websites like www.robinsonandcrusoe.com or www.thelittleprince.com. Another good listening practice is watching films and videos on www.youtube.com. Once you know about 2,000 words, you can start using films. The best approach is to watch the film with subtitles first to understand it. Then watch it again without subtitles. If you really like the film, watch it multiple times. Each viewing helps you understand more. Documentaries and reality shows are also helpful. Reality shows are often easier to follow because they have a simple format. Make sure to listen for at least 30 minutes each day. The more you listen, the better you will understand. Mrs. Miller advised us to focus on what we already know, even if it's just a little. Celebrate every new sentence you understand. Listening is the easiest way to learn. You don't have much to do, just listen. Did this help? She asked. Yes, Jake replied. I'm excited to improve my listening skills now. Great, Mrs. Miller said. Remember, try to listen for 30 minutes every day to get better. On Friday, we had a discussion in class about our reasons for learning English. Can you remember when you first got interested in English? Mrs. Miller asked. I raised my hand and shared my story. I remember when I began to like English. At first, it was tough in high school. I didn't understand the rules, and learning vocabulary felt impossible. I finished high school as a beginner and thought I'd never master it. But then I discovered music. When I turned 20, I started listening to my favorite band, the Beatles. I wanted to know their lyrics, so I translated their songs. Slowly, I began to understand more. Things changed when I met two women from England on a train. We had a simple conversation, but it built my confidence. From that point, I practiced English nearly every day and I started improving. Mrs. Miller thanked me for sharing. Your story is fascinating. You started without motivation, but then you found it in music. Motivation is essential. When you have it, success follows. Then she asked the class about motivations. One girl wanted to read historical books in English. Another student dreamed of becoming a professional tennis coach in England, while a woman aimed to work in a big international company. I noticed everyone had reasons for learning English that tied to their lives. At the end of the lesson, Mrs. Miller asked if we liked English. I replied, I didn't enjoy it in high school, but now I do. It's so useful. She agreed. It's important to find something you love that connects to English, whether it's music, culture, or history. Liking what you learn makes it easier to study. If you want to communicate well in English, aim for at least 3,000 words. I nodded, realizing I liked not only the Beatles, but also my teacher and my English speaking boss. I found it easier to practice daily. On Saturday, I played soccer for our school team. We had a great game and won 3-2. Afterwards, we celebrated our victory at a local cafe. If you want to learn English, remember to stay motivated and use it daily. How to learn 3,000 words. In our next lesson, a student asked, You mentioned that it's good to know 3,000 words. How can I find these important words to learn? Mrs. Miller answered, You can search online for lists of 3,000 most common English words, but just memorizing a list isn't very effective. It's essential to learn words in context. When you study words from a list, you may learn them without understanding their use in sentences. Basic words like mother, father, apple, dog, or house are easier to remember because they represent things we can visualize. For example, when you hear dog, you can immediately picture one in your mind. But for words like appreciate or suppose, it's different. Many students begin with word lists. And while that might work initially, it won't help you advance once you reach 1,000 words. To learn at a higher level, you need to see words in full sentences. Understanding a word in context will help you remember it better. It's slower to learn words from lists, but there are better methods. As the days passed, a cozy cafe continued to be a bustling hub for the community. Oliver found comfort in the rhythm of his life, where each day brought new experiences, challenges, and encounters that deepened his understanding of English. He recalled the lessons from school, particularly the advice his teacher had given him about learning words through context rather than lists. Each customer, each interaction became a new opportunity for him to absorb the language more naturally. One afternoon, as he wiped down a table near the window, Oliver's gaze drifted outside. The sun bathed the street in a warm glow, and people hurried by, each absorbed in their own word. It was during this moment of reflection that he noticed a similar face approaching the cafe. It was Sarah, a bright and cheerful woman he had met a few weeks earlier. She often came in for coffee after her morning runs. "Hi, Oliver," Sarah waved, her smile infectious. "How's your day going?" "Hello, Sarah. My day is going good. Thank you," Oliver replied, feeling his confidence swell at the ease of their exchange. "Can I get my usual?" she asked playfully, knowing he had already memorized her order. "2 shots of espresso, please." "Coming right up," he smiled back, feeling proud of how far he had come. It was moments like this that made him realize how learning a language could weave connections between people. As he prepared her order, he thought about how comfortable he was getting with English. He could understand customers' accents better, and he had even begun to engage in longer conversations. His boss, Emma, had encouraged him to practice, reminding him that every word spoken was a step towards improvement. "Here you go." Oliver handed Sarah her coffee with a flourish. "Thanks. You're getting better every day, you know," she said, taking a sip. "Your English is really improving." Oliver felt a warm rush of pride at her words. "I try to use English whenever I can," he admitted, "and I listen to different accents now." Sarah leaned in, her eyes sparkling with curiosity. "Really? What's the hardest accent for you so far?" He hesitated, recalling his experience with the Scottish couple. "I think Scottish is challenging. I didn't understand a word they said the first time," he confessed, laughing softly at the memory. "Ah, the Scots. They have a unique way of speaking, but you'll get used to it. Just keep listening and practicing," she encouraged, her voice soothing. "I hope so," Oliver replied, feeling a flicker of determination. He wanted to be able to understand anyone who walked through the cafe door, no matter their accent or language background. As the cafe grew busier, more customers flowed in, each bringing their stories and culture with them. It was a melting pot of languages and experiences, and Oliver found himself excited to learn from each interaction. The next week, as he was serving a group of tourists from France, Oliver encountered another challenge. They were trying to order lunch, but their English was limited. He felt a familiar wave of anxiety wash over him. What if he couldn't understand them? What if he made a mistake? "Can I help you?" he asked, trying to keep his voice steady. One of the women pointed at the menu, her brow furrowed. "We want, chicken," she struggled, glancing at her friend for support. "Chicken sandwiches?" Oliver asked, hoping he understood her correctly. "Yes, yes," she exclaimed, relief flooding her face. With a smile, he took their order and proceeded to prepare it. In that moment, he realized something crucial. Every interaction was a learning experience. Even when it felt daunting, he was growing. Later that evening, Oliver shared his experiences with Emma during their usual debrief. Today was interesting. I had to really think on my feet with those French tourists. But I think I did okay, he said, his voice filled with enthusiasm. Emma smiled, pride evident in her eyes. That's fantastic. Each customer teaches you something new. It's not just about words, it's about understanding people and their needs. Yes, exactly. It's like each day is a mini adventure. Oliver replied, reflecting on how his job had become more than just a source of income. It was a gateway to new relationships and experiences. One sunny Saturday, the cafe was buzzing with excitement for the upcoming local festival. As part of the celebration, Emma had decided to host a special event featuring local musicians and artists. The cafe was adorned with colorful decorations, and the aroma of freshly baked pastries wafted through the air. Oliver, I need you to help set up the table outside, Emma instructed, her voice bright with anticipation. Of course, I'd love to, he replied, his heart racing with the thrill of being part of something bigger. As he arranged the tables, he spotted Sarah again, her face glowing with enthusiasm as she chatted with her friends. She waved him over, her smile inviting. Oliver, come join us. We're just discussing our favorite songs. Curiosity piqued. He made his way over. What songs? He asked, eager to be included in their conversation. We're sharing our favorite songs from different cultures. I just mentioned a beautiful French song, Sarah exclaimed. Do you know any songs from your culture? One of her friends asked, looking at him with interest. Oliver felt a flush of embarrassment but quickly pushed it aside. I know a song from my country that's very popular. It's called Sari, he said, stumbling over the pronunciation. It's about love and longing. It has beautiful melodies. Let's hear it, Sarah urged, her eyes sparkling with excitement. Oliver hesitated, feeling shy about singing in front of them, but he reminded himself of his teacher's words about embracing vulnerability and the journey of learning. Taking a deep breath, he began to hum the melody, his voice soft yet filled with emotion. As he sang the chorus, he felt the warmth of their support, their smiles encouraging him. It was a moment of connection that transcended language. They joined in, clapping along, and for a few moments, the cafe transformed into a space of shared joy and celebration. When he finished, applause erupted from his newfound friends. That was amazing, Sarah said, her eyes shining. You have a beautiful voice. Thank you. I didn't expect you all to enjoy it so much, Oliver replied, his heart swelling with gratitude. It just shows how music brings people together, regardless of language. One of the other friends added, despite the joyous moments, Oliver's journey was not without challenges. One afternoon, he encountered a customer who spoke with a thick accent he struggled to decipher. Can I help you? Oliver asked, trying to mask his growing anxiety. Coffee, strong, the man replied, his voice barely audible. Strong coffee? Got it, Oliver said, feeling relieved but still uncertain. However, as he prepared the order, he began to doubt himself again. What if he had misunderstood? What if he served something completely different? As he served the coffee, the man looked at him, his expression unreadable. You're new? He asked slowly. Yes, I am learning English, Oliver admitted, the words spilling out in a rush. Sometimes I have trouble understanding accents. The man nodded, crossing his face. I understand. It takes time. Just keep trying. Encouraged by his words, Oliver felt a weight lift off his shoulders. It was a reminder that everyone struggled in their own way, and he was not alone in his journey. As the festival weekend continued, Oliver found himself immersed in conversations with people from all walks of life. A family from Italy shared stories of their travels, while a group of students from Spain discussed their favorite foods. Each exchange was a lesson in culture, language, and connection. I love how your cafe feels like a meeting point for so many different people, one of the Italian women remarked. Thank you. I want everyone to feel welcome here, Oliver replied, his voice filled with pride. In the evenings, as the festival wound down, Oliver sat with Sarah and their friends, sharing stories of their respective cultures. What's your favorite thing about your home? Sarah asked. Her curiosity piqued. Oliver thought for a moment, reflecting on the beauty of his homeland. The landscapes are breathtaking mountains, rivers, and traditions. We celebrate life through music and dance. It's very lively, he said, feeling a sense of longing for his roots. That sounds beautiful. I'd love to visit one day, Sarah said, her eyes bright with wonder. And I want to learn more about your music. Of course, I'll teach you some songs, Oliver replied, his heart warming at the thought of sharing his culture. As the weeks turned into months, Oliver's journey continued to unfold. He faced challenges with newfound resilience, embracing each moment as an opportunity to learn and grow. One day, he stood in front of his teacher, excited yet anxious to share his progress. I've been practicing a lot. I can understand different accents much better now, he announced proudly. That's fantastic, Oliver. You've come so far, he replied, her face lighting up with encouragement. What's your biggest takeaway from this experience? Oliver paused, reflecting on the journey. I've learned that language is more than just words. It's about connections, understanding, and sharing stories. I've made so many friends and learned from their experiences. For beginners, I highly recommend reading Robinson Crusoe in simple English. You can find it at www.robinsoncrusoe.com. It's the best resource for learning new words. Also, remember that every important word will keep appearing in your life until you learn it. This is similar to how children learn their first language. They don't study lists, they use the language every day. Important words come back to them repeatedly until they understand them fully. We continue learning this way throughout our lives.